Hello, and welcome to another fabulous moon event. This is for the Libra New Moon happening this Sunday, September 25th. All right? So buckle in and get out some notes if that's your thing. Otherwise, you can always play this back later. Closer or after the event to see what manifests that's in alignment with the messages that I'm intuiting for you today. So yeah, let's get started. All right, so this Libra new moon is officially happening at 5:54 p.m. Eastern Standard Time this Sunday, September 25th. The chart that we are looking at is based in New York City, New York. It's just one of the hot spots that I like to use when looking at a chart. I technically live in Los Angeles, so for you East Coast people, this will be a little more interesting. But we are not really looking at the house placements when we look at the new and full moons on a collective scale, okay? Because this is information that can apply to anyone, anywhere, all right? Um, with limitations. But so what we're really looking at when we look at these events are the aspects that the planets are making and where they're at, okay? Again, take houses out of consideration. So what do we look at first? As always, with any new or full moon or eclipse, we look at where are the sun and moon. New moons, the sun and the moon are in harmony. They are, well, not necessarily in harmony, but they're in the same spot in the sky. And so they're focused on activating a new story in this area of your astrology and for the world at large. So, what are we activating here with this new moon? A 2 degrees and 49-minute new moon in Libra. Okay, and so we know Libra to be this story that really speaks of balance, speaks of wise counsel, judgment. We think in a very political or more of a historical framework. And so Libras being a cardinal sign, usually indicates that this energy, these people show up where there are already established like framework, is what I'm looking for. So we think about like systems that are relied upon, because they've stood the test of time. So Libra is attracted to things like government, things like politics, those things that are kind of like stiff and a little more about discernment and about making sure that we are acknowledging the past in favor of the present circumstance. And so weighing those two, that's kind of what we're doing when we're trying to equalize or find equilibrium with Libran energy, is we're taking the precedents of old and seeing how they can apply to this new circumstance and seeing what are the similarities and how can we come to a verdict or a conclusion by taking in everyone's story into account and giving everyone a fair trial or a fair chance at maintaining order and peace in their lives and hopefully not ruining it. But Libra is very much a cause and effect sign. And so if someone has taken an action, we need a solution or a rectification that is equal to that action. So if you steal a candy bar, okay, there's a punishment there, but it's not going to be the same punishment as if you kill somebody, heaven forbid. And so Libra is the sign that introduces us to weighing out both sides and seeing, okay, there has to be a judgment, there has to be a call, there has to be a verdict to this action, because Libra is not about action. Libra is about passivity, is about observing someone else in their actions. And that's why it's known as the Descendant. And that's why Libra is a sign of us sitting comfortably, being more receptive, instead of initiatory. And so that's what this sign is known to do, and that's what it does in your astrology wherever it is. But there is this very severe scale, with Libra, which is if you give them reason to do something, they will do it. And so this sign does have a little bit of a harsh angle to it. Happening opposite Aries, hey, Aries brings a lot of frustration, a lot of friction, a lot of demanding energy. And so, of course, when we're working with a polar opposite sign, we're still going to see some harsh or tenuous aspects, emerge. And I think that can be said of all the cardinal signs. But it's because they serve as a huge reference in our charts as to one of the four pillars of your astrology, which is Aries, Cancer, Libra, and Capricorn. Those are our north, south, east, and west, right? And so they speak to major directions or focuses in everyone's life, which Libra is the focus on relationships, okay? And so it's about who's in your life, navigating those relationships at a big scale or a small scale, intimate or not, and really stepping out of my own needs and my own vantage point and really seeing other people and stepping into appreciation and admiration for what everyone else is experiencing, okay? And so this sign is very deep for that reason. But again, when it comes to judgment, judgment is not a fun quality to play with. And Virgo introduces us to judgment on a personal scale. And Libra actually allows us to take a more mature framework of judgment and apply it to society, to politics, to relationships. And so the things that happen with this sign are a little more important for this reason. And so we think about that, but I've seen this so many times in my life where a Libra just needs a reason to do something or to not do something, and they will. I don't know what that's really called psychologically, but if you give them a reason, they will respond, especially react. You're working with the divine feminine sign, And so we see a Venus tie to this sign. Libra is Venus's main ruler. Its secondary ruler is Taurus. And so we can see a lot of similarities between Venus and Libra for this reason. We look at Aphrodite as well. She came out and she didn't have a suitor. And I think in most of the stories she doesn't. She actually kind of prefers some autonomy, and so there's that sense of feminine power and feminine independence even, And so we see a lot of those themes happen with Libra. We see, and I've seen trickling into the equinox, which is today, really strong female personality surface, whether on social media, whether the videos that get recommended on my page. It's so cool to see those synchronicities with what's happening in the sky, and just the feminine people in my life really stepping up as they're hearing this kind of call and this shift into this season. And so yeah, it's big. There's a lot to it. And I'm not also one to eavesdrop, but just in my travels throughout the city, I've literally been picking up conversations where people have been really concerned about taxes, or that's not right, or that's not fair. And I'm just like, wow, it's speaking really loud this time around. And there could be a reason for that. We're going to see why this Libra energy is so big this year. And why the season is extremely important. Of course, we have a seasonal shift, and so that in itself brings a bigger energy, a bigger awareness to the changes happening as we can feel them through the weather. We can see them as the weather changes, and as does our outfits, how we show up, if we're showing up as much or vice versa. So all that to consider when we have these cardinal shifts. But new moon in Libra, we take the new emphasis and we apply that to Libra. So new balance, new harmony, new relationships, and oftentimes it's a little more difficult to find true balance when you are alone, when you are trying to do something on your own. And so this season introduces us to the importance of relationships and allowing for them to blossom and allowing other people that can provide something that we cannot provide for ourselves to step forward. And so the more we can trust that the people that are coming up around this transit and in this season, because remember the sun is activating new opportunities wherever it is, and so it's going to be in this sign for a month. And so we see new opportunities arise for that entirety, but really the maximum or the initiatory, the start button happens with the new moon in each sign. And so we see that, but this is really about understanding, okay, if I need a person to achieve this in my life, then I need to also rectify and outline what are my responsibilities, what is my duty in this union. Is it a work relationship? Is it an intimate relationship? Is it an affair? Is it maybe a harder relationship to juggle because it's not quote unquote right? And so we have all that to consider. And so Libra, again, when there's a reason to do something, it finds it a lot easier to navigate. And so, the reason to come together closer with a coworker would be for an advancement opportunity, or something like that. And so, the reason to have an affair would be, I don't know, maybe someone is really wanting to have a child and they don't want a committed relationship, as bad as that all sounds. And so there's a objective behind it. That's a good word. Libra can proceed because Libra is operating in the mind. We have the air element here. Less in the mind than, say, Gemini or Aquarius. But Libra has at least half, of its attention is given to its mind and what it can resolve or come to through the processes of the logical, the more rational mind. And so we're not really thinking of necessarily a free thinker. We're thinking of someone that's more about weighing pros and cons, and really getting clear on the options. And so taking that time to do that is very important in that season. And so this is usually a time where we don't make snap decisions. Libra is not known for that. Libra is really about, it's so funny because we think about this being the love sign, but we don't see that heart association as strongly with Libra as we do, say, with Leo, which is actually the ruler of the heart. And so we're not speaking as to love in I'm being seen for the authentic me in this relationship kind of love, like I'm allowed to be my full self. No, Libra is the kind of love where it's more mature. It's more about almost having a contract or an agreement together. And so it's a little more stiff per se, but it can go a lot farther because you're agreeing, you're coming to an arrangement with somebody, ideally, with terms or with a goal in mind, whereas Leo is more free-flowing love. It's more, can be independent, or, it is more up for change. It's fire, and so it's still going to be attracted to what new things come up for it and divert its attention for better or worse. And so that's the difference. So Libra is more about weighing out the pros and cons of relationships, and even, as weird as it sounds, in romance, who hasn't been in a romantic relationship and didn't at one point think, okay, so what is this person providing for me? And what is my role too? When you get to that point, you really want to consider that, because a lot of times we just rush into these things, right? And so Libra wants us to acknowledge how it doesn't have to be so forced. It can be more about establishing goals or terms, even if we're thinking of a very progressive type of relationship where maybe one party is open and the other is not, or something. It really comes to outlining all of that. And so everyone has, again, framework is the word that keeps coming up. To hold things together when there's difficulty or when there's instances up ahead. Leo doesn't necessarily have that. Leo is kind of an all-in energy. It's fixed. And so when it moves in a direction, it's very strong, and it's not holding back in any way. And that's why fixed signs usually take their time to do so, because that's not an easy thing to do, to be all in. And so Libra shows, we're not necessarily that, but we are very much focused on how, we can get our needs met and also provide for the other person. And so we're meeting in the middle. And I was just thinking the other day, I was like, wow, the and symbol, the ampersand, really is like the Libra symbol. If we were to look at punctuation, is that the right word? It really felt like it, because I was like, okay, what would an opposition be? It would probably be an and what would a conjunction be? It'd probably be like a comma, random as fuck, I know, but that's a great segue. Let's talk about the opposition aspect, because we have some really key ones in this new moon. So over here we have new potential, and so less definition when we look at the new moons versus the full moons for that reason. We're starting, and so new moons are great for you to be intentional, to start with something that you haven't done before, or with someone you haven't been with before, in this case, because we see a lot of social implications here with the Mercury and Venus. Venus is a little farther out, but showing that this is very much about people, and even workplace relationships too, coming up with them both being in Virgo. But the opposition is traditionally what, in my practice, I associate this a lot to Venus. Venus loves to be in opposition. Why? Because Libra, her ruler, is the natural opposing sign, being the descendant sign, whereas Aries is our natural ascendant sign, which means that's where in the first house, as the first sign, that's where the sun is always rising. It's always activating. It's birthing over there. And in Libras, the sun is kind of withering, if you will. It's descending, and so it's going dark. And so this is where the moon really steps into full power. And if you even see that, this is a little more advanced astrology, but if you even see that line from ascendant to descendant, that would be the full moon aspect, with the sun where the ascendant is and the moon where the descendant is. And so in opposition, we can really see through the lens of a full moon, which ironically isn't the transit that we're talking about here, but I want to share with you some ideas about how to look at an opposition, because we have a 1-degree orb with Jupiter with this new moon, and this is powerful. This is powerful stuff. When we get Jupiter involved, Jupiter is your evolved self. It's your higher self. Jupiter would usually indicate a person that is in the last third of their life. If we were to consider Mars is in the beginning third, the sun was the middle third, and Jupiter would be the third, or the final stage of the person's life, and so it's really about the collective. By that time in your life, when you're at the latter half, you've established many relationships, you've achieved many things, and therefore things have naturally grown to a bigger scale, which is what Jupiter likes to be on, as a bigger stage, if you will, because life grows confidence, experience grows confidence. And again, it's a lot easier to have everyone a part of your endeavors the older you get, because we're talking about that maturity. And so the new moon happening opposite Jupiter this time around, we see relationship aspects with an opposition. So how to explain this is, I wish I had some examples here. um, but you basically, in an opposition, we have 2 degrees, the sun and the moon in Libra, in that area of the sky. We have Jupiter at 3 degrees in Aries, okay? And so let's line these up. Oh gosh, I'm not really good with mirrors. And so what we see here is a direct line, a 180-degree angle, and so for a circle, which is what we're working with, that is half. That creates 2 halves to the circle in equal division. Here with only 1 degree of separation, which is a very strong aspect. And so what we're thinking about is, okay, there's a story happening over here. There's a character over here, the new moon, right? And there's Jupiter over here. And what happens is they're looking directly at each other because of this opposition. And so they're kind of staring, they're facing each other through this polarity in the sky, whereas other angles, a trine would be, okay, I'm turned a little bit this way and I'm facing, this person, which is turned a little bit this way. Or a square, which is like, you're kind of turned this way, 90 degrees. And so we're not getting that direct effect. And also when you consider the other aspects, we're talking about 4 points on a square, we're talking about 3 points on a trine, and a conjunction means you're side by side, and so you're kind of like elbow to elbow instead of face to face. An opposition is when you are face to face, you are facing someone. It's almost like looking into a mirror, but depending on what that planet or that body is that's facing the other body, you may not have, an exact reflection of your image, but it's a part of you that's being reflected. So we're getting really meta here. Usually happens when we talk about Jupiter. But okay, so you are the sun. So you're on the side of Libra at 2 degrees, and what's opposite you? What's opposite you is Jupiter. So Jupiter are those larger than life personalities, and they can be physically larger. Zeus was a very big character, quite literally, and also energetically. He took up a lot of space. He was the king, the father, And so those are usually the ones that speak the most and that are in charge. And so you think about that correlation to the people that are very successful, maybe very loud, and maybe even large, really are the ones you're focusing on in this transit, and in Libra season as this activates, the new relationships and stuff. And so what's also interesting is Jupiter is in retrograde, which implies that these characters are already existing in your life as opposed to new ones. Maybe where we see the new potential is around 2 degrees Libra. Over here, maybe these are people that you've come into contact with, you've said you wanted to work with, you said you wanted to hang out with, and now you're getting that do-over, that chance to actually have more intimate time with them, which is what the retrogrades are great about, because we're less distracted in the retrogrades or when there's a planet in retrograde involved, and it's more serious, it's more about perfecting or doing what we set out to do together. And so we see a lot more achievement come through with retrograde planets, oddly enough. It's just more about getting more focused and kind of dialing down your distractions and what's calling your attention. And so we see those, again, big personalities. Maybe these are people that in your life have a bigger social media presence, or they're on literal stages. Maybe they do very artistic work, or they're just known more in the public eye. And they are especially known for traveling and going on adventures. And maybe they have this kind of holly jolly comedic sense to them. They make things a lot lighter. and very welcoming. Usually Jupiter is very open arms. And so these are the personalities that we're working with during these transits. And of course, every relationship in your life is a reflection of what you are experiencing. Okay, and it's a great time to talk about that. Wow, 25 minutes already. When we think about reflections and we think about the opposition, if you're facing something, and that thing is a person, we see people as mirrors to us in some ways, not always directly as if we're looking at a mirror, but someone that's also looking at us is seeing ourselves or seeing parts of us, and so take, for instance, the example of looking at a mirror. You're going to narrow into certain parts of your body and your feelings, It's hard to take in the full thing, the full image, in a single look or a glance. And so that's what these oppositional relationships do. They allow us to look at, okay, Jupiter could be our weight. Are we struggling with how large an aspect of our physical body is, or are we struggling to be happy, to be more optimistic? Is that reflection that you see in yourself in the mirror a little more sad, or it's a little more restrained, and you want it to be a little more free? And so thinking about that and how what you need, you naturally attract. And so those people intuitively in your life can hear what you need, and they show up because of it. Because we're all connected, y'all, if you didn't already know. So Jupiter are those people that want, consciously or not, to make things easier in your life. And so they have this kind of superhero or savior quality to them. Especially if we look at Jupiter as a planet. Jupiter was the gift giver. There's a famous story, one of the most famous that are associated to Jupiter, or Zeus, his other name, where he granted everyone's wishes, at his wedding. And so it's that Godfather archetype of when Jupiter comes up in a big way in a transit or a moon event like this, we get to make a wish. We have the gift giver, Santa Claus almost, allowing us to have something that we really want and we really desire, since our focus is about love, is about beauty, is about money, is about receiving. It's a great time to make a wish. So that's a really big, wow, I took you guys really far with that one. That's more of like a course stuff, but that's why Libra energy fascinates me so much, because there's so much to it. There's the descendant, there's the equinoxes, there's the opposition, there is this mirror effect when we talk about people, because it's no longer about the individual, it's about the relationship, of what you're trying to do. So let's briefly go over other aspects. So we also have Mercury conjunct this new moon, and so again, it's about talking, it's about social affairs, and so this is a great time to say what you've been needing to say. Retrograde implies that it's not necessarily a time to just jump in without knowing what to say. This is more about preparing and more about outlining. So this indicates that the conversations we're having are a little more, again, tenuous, but they're important to have. And maybe Libra indicates that we've come to a place of maturity or understanding the other person's role or what they're experiencing, which could give us enough insight to proceed forward with the right words with us. And now we also have some things happening with Neptune. So is Neptune directly involved in this new moon? No, but anything that's happening at the time of a moon event also activates. And so what do we see here? We see Neptune opposite Venus, really big opposition. And we also have Mercury opposite Neptune continuing. And so the Venus one is going to be a little more new going into this event, and the Mercury one's already been happening. So Neptune's a major player right now, as well as Jupiter. So these are major. These are our spiritual planets. And so one, what I have found is when we have really spiritual energies activated, that can imply that it's a harder time for you. You think about, okay, prayer being one of the aspects when we look at spirituality. It's hoping that things can get easier. It's asking for cosmic support, for godly support, for divine help. And so we can see that relationship, particularly when Neptune is involved, because Neptune is our hopelessness that kind of comes and it allows us to really feel that there's a lack, that there's something missing. And so that's certainly happening in our mind. Is that the reality? That's hard to say. A lot of times, people, when we talk to them, they realize, Tyler, you're doing just fine. What are you talking about? Why are you so scared or worried about all this stuff? And I'm like, I don't know. I just can't stop thinking about it. That's because of this relationship, Mercury with Neptune. Or you're attracting people that are having a hard time or go at it, or this is just your financial piece, Venus opposite Neptune. And so you're wondering, you're like, how the hell am I going to make this work? How am I going to pay my bills? How am I going to make this investment? I really want to move forward, but things aren't the way I want it. Things aren't the way I'm seeing them. And so what do? You continue to work on your intentions, your manifestations. That's Neptune. So continue to imagine and believe that you deserve the beautiful life that I know you do, and the people to add to it if you feel like you're lacking in that regard. So some major oppositions. Not only are we addressing those really larger than life personalities, but we're also addressing and meeting with those people that are extremely spiritual, maybe the ones that you have this very, very deep sense or connection to. Maybe you know quite confidently that you share a past life together, or you just have this ease when you come together and you're just like, oh my God, I don't have to think. I don't have to be anything, you know what I mean? Like, literally, I can just surrender in your presence, whether they are a healer or an artist or someone that is just very much like show up how you want to show up. I'm here to hold space for you in any way. That's really happening. And there's two sides to every energy. Jupiter, these are very typically egoic people. These personalities that they just kind of insert themselves, or, they just want more and more and more. And so they can be kind of gratuitous, or they overdo things. Neptune are usually the people that, if it's not healthy at the time when they're stepping in, are the types that you kind of have to look behind your back at. You're like worried, oh, did they? I thought they were going to bring that thing to the dinner and they didn't, They're like very slippery. There's some funny stories in mythology about the Neptune influence characters. One being the old man, the old sea man, the old man in the sea. I'm not sure exactly how to say it, but it's fun. He can morph into different characters and stuff. And so Neptune is that. These are pieces of your life and people that may not even feel very real because they're so divine and spiritually associated that they may come and go. They may not be ones that stick around very often. Just like in real life, we don't usually get angelic presences on the daily, unless there's something really hard happening. Unless you're really down in the dumps about something. So keep that in mind. The only other aspects we really have for this new moon, besides these really major oppositions happening, are Pallas and Lilith. Lilith is even closer to this new moon, so there's a square aspect happening. And so Lilith is, where in the ways that you're living or expressing your emotions are you being defiant? Are you not allowing others to help you? Lilith is our resistant side, and it has sexual connotations, and so it's like the side of us that can't be tamed, in your relationship to food and cancer, or to family, or to mother. Where are you resisting that? That's a part of this new moon activation. So maybe even some intimacy we see as a result can be a little more tricky or complicated when we're working with a square, because usually that means there's a compromise. There's something that outwardly isn't healthy, or that we have to navigate through first before we can have the time with the person. And the same goes with the Pallas Athena aspect here, making a 6-degree approximately orb square to this new moon. So not as strong with her, but we see some kind of goddess, some divine feminine energy stepping forward, and some, we have one a little scarier. And I mean, Athena's pretty damn intimidating too. She was the goddess of war. So we were really seeing more of the feisty side of Libra this year with this new moon event. And so be careful with your female counterparts or who you're interacting with, because maybe they are a lot more equipped to, to do something about it. And remember, the feminine, traditionally, their power lies with the reaction, their response. And so keep that in mind, because it's not necessarily about starting, that it's about how we're being received, how we're being seen. And this is where the feminine usually rules, is when we all come together, what's at play, what's happening. And that's where Libra season for sure activates. Is this encroaching on the vibe? Are you a disruptor? So she'll single out the individual if they are a threat to everyone else's enjoyment, and especially the Libra's enjoyment. So I just like to throw that in there. The cardinal signs, man, they crack me up, because they're just, it's not that they're complicated, but they're very they can be harsh. They can be. Not that other signs can't be as well, but I definitely see this with the cardinals. But if you think about, your sign has an association to a direction. It's a very concentrated aspect or energy. And so it's a sign that moves with very strong confidence. As you can see with a lot of Libras, in any social circumstance, ain't no one can compete with that. They move very confidently through other people. And out and about. And so, yeah, I hope this was insightful. Talked about some bigger things, some smaller things, but this Libra new moon is a great time to be intentional, and to really tap into your divine feminine. So what does that look like? And how is that showing up for you at this time? Are you nurturing? Are you trying to help others more? Are you becoming more aware of the problems that other people are facing in your community or the world at large? And what are you contributing to that? So we get a new cycle to start something that we haven't before. So we'll hit back on this maybe in 6 months down the road and see what this full moon has amounted, and what we've harvested through that time after this new moon has activated some new things for us. So I hope you guys enjoyed this one. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for subscribing as always, and I'll see you for the next moon event. Take care.